Hi, I'm Thomas Haney, and welcome to episode 2 of Core Next Gen. I'm so grateful for the response that we got after our first episode. I mean, it was just overwhelming to see all the people who commented, all the people who shared. Thank you all so much for reaching back to me and actually generating conversations of your own. For our guest today, we have Jacques Eckles. Now, Jacques Eckles is a man who owns several businesses. He's worked across industry, government, and has military service. He's done everything from being a tank commander to a hotel manager. Now for today's episode, the theme is you gotta put the work in. Now Jacques is one of the most hardest working people I know. As I said, he has these multiple areas that he is excelling in, but he's doing multiple ones at the same time too. So it's just great to have him on the show, great to learn from him about how hard work can produce great things in your life if you're willing to put the work in. You see all types of things on social media nowadays about easy ways to get rich or easy ways to get here. But if you actually look at the data and you look at the people who have been successful, somebody at some point put the work in. And as men, that's our responsibility. So, welcome to today's show. Hey, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Thomas, for having me. I'm honored that you chose to be on Black History Month.
Yes, it's the perfect time and the perfect month. For our viewers, this is Jacques Eckles. He's currently a logistics manager for the U.S. Army PEO STRI, International Program Office. And he has an extensive resume of a multitude of jobs. I think you mentioned over 20 different jobs?
Yes, I stopped counting after 20. It's over 20 plus. So.
20 plus jobs. Currently owns 3 different businesses and does a number of other things. And so it's great to have you on the show, particularly on Black History Month, as we think about where we've come from to where we are now. And you grew up in Clarksdale, Mississippi?
Yes, I grew up in the Delta, Clarksdale, Mississippi. Back then, I think the population was about 75,000. Now it's probably about 12,000.
Wow, so small town, deep south. Can you paint a picture of us for us, what that was like?
Ooh, it was rough because you probably heard stories about Mississippi. I grew up in a single family household because my mom was divorced and she raised 5 kids by herself. So during that time, there was a lot of hand-me-downs. So if we got something new, we was happy about it. So she did the best that she could. She was trying to go back to school. She worked 40 hours a week. We had help from the grandparents, but most of the time it was just our mom helped us out.
Wow, so that's a lot of challenges in the upbringing. But looking back from then till now, I can tell you didn't let any of that hold you back.
Absolutely. I think that goes back to my grandparents and my mother's. So I chose my grandfather or grandmother as my mentors because both my grandfathers was ministers. So that helps out a lot. And it didn't hold us back because I always want to do better. Because I always say, hey, if I'm in this situation, how would I help my kids out? So I think it's more a motivation to growing up in the same kind of hole to always try to achieve or do something better.
Oh, that's good. That's a good point. Because I've worked with a lot of kids through the years whose fathers weren't there for various reasons. Some wanted to be there and couldn't, and some just weren't there. Is there something that you would want them to know to help them overcome their situation? Because there's a lot of emotion that goes with that too, and frustration.
Yes, you're right. You hit the key word, frustration. I was frustrated almost all the time. You see other kids out there playing with their fathers, and me, it wasn't. It was me playing with my brother. So we was like, and that's a bad tool. You have to mentor from people like your same age. So, but I did found guidance or mentorship in teachers. So we did have male teachers. I remember one in particular, Mr. Kirby, in the 9th grade. He taught math. So that was one of my favorite subjects. So I spoke to him quite often about life and how we did things. And other mentors was probably uncles, but they was more like street mentors. They tell you don't get in trouble, don't do what I did wrong. They'll drink something, so you should be drinking it. So they'll show you ways of doing things differently when I was growing up.
Gotcha. I understand. So you got it from both sides and both worlds.
Yes.
But still being able to achieve success from that. That's awesome.
Yes.
So, with your transition out of Mississippi, what did that look like?
Well, so that starts back in thinking you want to become a NFL player, thinking you had the skill set to become a basketball player. So, but mine was always I wanted to fly. I wanted to be a jet pilot. So I put in my package to try to go to to go to the Air Force Academy. But had everything set up, but I didn't do the one thing you're supposed to do. You're supposed to you have to be nominated from a senator from your state. And that year, we didn't nominate anybody. So I should have been chosen that year because I met all the criteria to be academy. So I got so upset and I said, hey, let's just join the Army. But the thing about that, a year earlier, I got accepted into the West Point prep school, but I didn't want to go to West Point. So I just did the Army. I said, I'm going to go in the Army for 2 years. They offered me I think it was $25,000 to go for 2 years. And I said, I'm going to try that. So I graduated 17. 1 month later, I was in for a 4C Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That's great to see how you took that opportunity. There's one piece I do want to go back to. You mentioned that you had the paperwork and the things to go to the academy, but do you think it would have made a difference if you had someone who had walked that path before to help you?
Absolutely. Being from my family, I come from a military family, like a third generation military. Always been enlisted. So, as you know, as I mentioned to you before, I'm the first officer in my family. I'm the first male to get an undergraduate degree. I'm the first male to get a master's degree. So I didn't have anyone to guide me. No one in school knew anything about the Air Force Academy going in Mississippi. So when you have a big dream or goal like that, they're looking at you funny because one thing, you're black, and there's not too many black pilots even now. So they're looking at you funny, you can't be a pilot. So everything I had to do is going into the library. It wasn't the internet back then. So you go to the library, you have to print out the paper, you have to handwrite it because sometimes the typewriter will mess up, so you have to print neatly. So yes, if I had someone back then that could guide me or lead me to that right path, it would have turned out different. I think I would end up I would probably end up in the Air Force Academy, or I would have been a West Point graduate.
Wow. So I think that's very critical for our viewers to hear. So young people, if you have a dream, even if you don't understand all the pieces, make sure you reach out. You can reach out to our network or other places, because I believe there's someone out there that can help you. And those of us who have walked that path before, look around. There may be someone who is in your shoes that doesn't have the support system you did, or maybe needs it. So I just want to make sure we get that across. So as you went into the Army, what were some of your favorite assignments?
So Army, the first thing, it was going through basic. I did what they call OSA. It's basic combined with AIT. So instead of 9 weeks, I went through 16 to 20 weeks ahead. So it's a little.
Wow, so you went through extra.
So that's the only thing I didn't know. I didn't know I was, you just joined it. You don't know what's OSA. They say you're doing it. So I would go basic. We was in basic for 4 months. It was crazy. And then I'm not even counting. That's why I said 16 to 20 weeks, because sometimes 0 week. You might stay there 3 weeks till they build enough enlisted soldiers to come in. So you'll start with 30, and then also you see 40 and 50, then it's time to start a class, and that's when the weeks start. So that's why I say I was there for a couple 0 weeks.
Wow. And so as you look at those dynamics, where do you think the source of your work ethic came from? Because you're one of the hardest working people I know. You're still working.
Yeah, I try to. I think it has to come from my mother. Like I said, being a single parent, I remember my mother. She was a nurse aide. She was the first black female welder in Mississippi. She welded one of my brother-in-law's ships in Mississippi. So,
Wow.
So she was always working a couple jobs. She was always doing something with the church. She was always doing something with Easter Star, because I come from a Masonic family, and she was always moving. But she always, one thing I love about my mom, through all that busy time, we always played softball on Saturday. That's a family and get some friends together. So that was the one thing I remember. I think I get the hard work from my mother.
Wow, that's really special. And that's something I also want our viewers to key into, is the importance and the value of hard work. Because we're entering this modern automated society, we're seeing things shift. But even if something looks easy, there's still usually a lot of work it took to get there.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. because I think, like saying, being like you said, automated society now. My degree is one of my degrees is information technology. So I used to be programming and doing the source code. Now they have templates. It's so easy. I'm like, hey, why I had to write 1,000 source code, 10,000 source code, spending 1 o'clock and make sure I get this project done, and they just go do it in less than 4 hours. It's amazing how the technology and AI has improved since I graduated from college.
Wow, it has been a shift. Even in my span, it's been a shift. Now you fathered 8 kids.
Yes.
And one set of twins.
Yes.
What are some things you've done to instill a work ethic in your children for us new fathers?
So actually, I have 6, and 2 come from my wife now, but they've been with me for 10, 12 years. So, like you said, I father 8. So some people say, you had 8 kids. She had that many kids. So no, she didn't have all the kids. When they look at her, they're like, no. She look young. Yeah, she's young. But she didn't. So I think it goes back to my mother. When she's working all the time, my older brother, my older sister was there. We had chores. When you wake up, we didn't wake up. Sometimes we woke up, my mom wasn't there. So we had the alarm clock, and it goes off, and we know we had to get up, come in. We ain't had that in the room. So we had a two-bedroom house. I slept on the let-out couch. Me and my oldest brother, and my sister, and my 2 youngest brothers slept in the room, and my mom slept in the room. So we had to clean up. We have to cook. When she didn't have time, she didn't feel like cooking. We have to wash dishes. We have to mow the yard. You have to do every little chores that you come to. You have to clean up the bathroom. If it's only one bathroom, unlike kids now, you might have 2 to 3 bathrooms in the house. But I think during that time, I try to instill the same thing. Even though my wife and I say, hey, they need to straight up their bed. First thing you get up, straighten your bed. Next thing you do, brush your teeth, clean up, get straight into your room. Even now, I have my 8-year-olds. I wash their clothes, but I make them fold their clothes and put it in their closet and in their room. So they've been doing that since about 5. So, and then when I go outside and I mow the yard, I have them pull the weeds. I give them some gloves and pull the weeds. And they think it's fun. They think it's a game. So I like, wow, I didn't never think it was fun cleaning. But they ask, can we clean? Can we have? They'll come out there and I try to, they can sit down lawnmower and mow the yard. But most of the time I get all that from my mother. When she wasn't there, we had to do the work. And then I just try to do the same thing. And I turn out okay. So I said, why not try to do the same thing for the kids?
No, that's really good because it's important for us as men to be able to be trusted to get our work done, even if nobody's watching.
Absolutely.
That's a critical aspect that we need to develop.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I have a godson who's from New York. And to see how the Southern mentality to us, North mentality is, because I say, do a project. And I give him a project and I say, I pay you this much. And then he do the price something. I said, no, you're not. And then you have to go explain to him why you're not paying. I said, when I ask you to pour the rocks in here, you got to smooth it out. You have to do the design right. You got to clean up behind yourself. He didn't know that because in New York it's so fast moving. You just do something, keep moving. Mm-hmm. So then he said, he calls me. He's in college and he calls me or texts me. He said, hey, I learned a lot from you. I remember you had me doing the rocks in that hot sun. I said, but I said, you want to get paid, you got to finish the job. So I didn't say no. I said, no, you're not finished. So it took him 2 days until he got the job completed. That's when I paid him.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I like how you held him accountable. I mean, I'm working with my kids on that now, and that's really important for us as men to do, is to hold each other accountable, yes, to do the job, finish the work, and continue to strive for better.
Since you mentioned it, I think that's great because I think as Black males, we should hold other males accountable. I think that's what we lack in our community. We see a Black male not doing his right job, not doing what he should be doing. We don't say nothing. Say, oh, no, it's not fine. You need to stop and say, dude, that's not right. And I think you're right. Accountability works for your kids as well as for your peers and your coworkers and your community.
That's good. That's a good point. I know at my last church we used to have this phrase about pulling each other's coattails,
yes,
and then just having the willingness to do that and also to receive that. Because it's easy to get offended.
Yes, you're right. Thin skin.
But one thing for our viewers that I can tell you is that this man will hold you accountable. I've worked for him before, and I appreciate it because it helped me get better and learn the system, learn everything that I needed to know, and then learn to put the work in myself. I'm going to share a quick story.
Okay.
So I remember on one project we were working on, and we went to a meeting, and someone told us some information, You were like, we need to go back and research that. And so I went back and did my research. Then I talked to you the next day, and you were like, oh yeah, I read the whole manual. The thing's like 100 and some odd pages. I said, well, let me go back and redo my research. Because it's that important for us to know what we're talking about. Because people tell you anything immediately, but you need to go back and check your facts. So.
Absolutely. And my twins like that. So they asked me a question. I said, I don't know the answer to that. And sometimes I do. And I said, let's research it together. They said, oh, Dad, I should never ask. I should never ask them because I think, okay, you look at. I said, Google might not be right, so let's look at service sources. Let's find this way. Let's look on another browser and see what they have. And before they know it, they know as much as I do. And they said, don't ask my dad a question because he's gonna make you research.
That's a good point today, because in today's day of misinformation, it's important that we take the time to do the work and make sure we know what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Because we got all kinds of people on Facebook giving advice.
Yes, you're right. Make sure you know the facts. Don't let someone tell you something. So don't drink bleach. You'll not cure COVID.
It's a shame we got to tell folks that. And it's amazing the power of our words. Because the things we say, people will believe.
Absolutely.
And so we need to make sure we're saying the right things. Yeah. So you love to dance.
That's my heart. That's my passion. Yes.
When did you start dancing?
I'm gonna say it's I'm from Mississippi when I was knee-high to a grasshopper. So I think I was dancing in her womb. I'm talking about, I think I just love to dance. I remember imitating the Jackson 5. I remember doing every move Michael Jackson did, every move Prince did. Those were my two dance idols, Michael Jackson and Prince. So everyone knew the whole video. You going from Little Red Corvette, you going from Thriller, I could do it all.
That's awesome.
So it started off when I was real young.
Wow. I love it because one of my sons really loves to dance too. So we'll put on the music, you just go for a long time.
But you know something? Actually, I love dance so much. I love watching ballet. Even when I was, it was on PBS at that time because we didn't have any channels. Mm-hmm. So, but we couldn't afford ballet. Mm-hmm. So I used to make up like I was a ballet dancer. I'll pull up my mom's stocking, put some white socks, and go around just jumping through the house. So, wow. But that's why when my oldest daughter took ballet, oh yes, definitely you can take it. How many lessons you want in? So yes. So
that's awesome. I love how you recognize that in her too, and took the time to cultivate that. And I think that's another one of our responsibilities as men. If we see someone in the community that has these skills, but maybe they don't have the resources because sports are expensive.
Yes, it is.
Dance is expensive. I mean, there's a cost to everything nowadays.
It is. Because you're right. Because I'm thinking about when I played football and baseball or pony league, whatever, it was free. Now you have to buy all the gear. You have to buy the pass. I'm like, well, I would have never played football, but guess what? My mom couldn't afford a pass. Mm-hmm. So you're right. And I'm thinking back. That's why when I was in grad school in Texas A&M, I took over a coaching job because I didn't like how they was coaching. And then the director said, run it like you think it should be ran. And I took over, and that's why I ended up coaching in Texas for a couple of years while I was there in grad school. I also ended up refereeing. So some gentleman saw me. He said, hey, you know this game? I said, yeah, I've been playing basketball all my life. So I went to a 2 school he set up for high school. So I refereed high school basketball and volleyball. Then I did so well, he said, hey, do you want a job as collegiate? I said, no, I got a real job. I said, I just go to school, but I said, I'm here for going to school, but I have a real job with DOT. He didn't know that. So that's one of my stories about other jobs that I had.
I love it. And I love it how when you work hard, there's like doors just start opening for you.
Absolutely.
People see it and they notice it. I love that. So how did you get into salsa? Because we don't always see a whole lot of us into salsa. Maybe it's just we don't see it.
So that's a great answer. And me and my brother, we was in Vegas, I think last year, and I was trying to remember where did I first saw it. So my brother, so you know how your memories are bad. So I thought it was a relative, or maybe it was a friend of the family. So I saw it back then. I didn't get back into it until 2007. I did a temporary assignment at Air Force Base, and I was working out at the gym. And I was passing by, I heard some music, and I was like, oh, my shoulders started moving. So I was like, what's going on? And they was practicing salsa. So I went up there and started doing some stuff. And he said, oh, come join us. So I got back into it in 2007. And then like 2 years later, I found out I had a knack for teaching. So I went to LA and got my certification. So then I opened my salsa studio. I had it open about 3 or 4 years. I probably taught over 10,000 people over that time frame. So when I taught, I used to go to corporation. I teach. They'll pay me or fly me out to their location for their party, and I teach for 3 hours. I also taught them. They have a dance thing in Alabama, in Birmingham, every year, and it's session. I'm talking at that time, I probably teach like 1,000 people in one group. That's why I brought my daughters in. I said, y'all want to make some money, so I brought Jessica and Janae in. So I had those as my 2 instructors on the floor while I was on the platform, because there was too many people, and I had to do this like each class, and all my classes were sold out. I said, no, bring them in. It's almost will be right about 100. So I said, no, bring them out. I found a way to teach them because I love teaching. I love dancing. So, and that's how I met my wife too in my studio. So,
wow,
it's crazy.
So it's amazing how when you exercise your gift and you're disciplined with it, you were blessed in so many ways. And then even to find your wife there, I mean,
yes,
that's special.
So to go back to your question, salsa really, it's a long story. It's actually song. So the music back in Cuba, in Puerto Rico, or the Dominican Republic, or the Isla Hispaniola, is song. That's the music they listen to. So from that started in the late 1800s up into the 90s. So salsa didn't come around to it back to New York. And this is how the story is told. You hear different people say it in the 60s and 70s. Some guy would ask them, what's they dancing to? It wasn't no name to us. So mambo, you might hear mambo or salsa, but somebody say, it's hot. Salsa mean hot, or caliente mean hot or spicy. So it's stuck. So somebody called it salsa. So that's how the words work. Salsa, the dance word, only been around since the 70s. So if you ask in the older generation from Cuba or from Puerto Rico, you're going to hear them say song or mambo.
Well, that is interesting. I did not know that before. And it really gives me a better appreciation for salsa and our roots there. And did you mention before that your grandmother was Haitian?
Yes. My great grandmother was Haitian, and my grandma, she died giving birth. I will try to remember the story to my grandma. So we have Haitian family in Miami, and that's that I guess we went from Miami to Louisiana to Mississippi. We stayed there, but then we have relatives in Chicago. But most people found better jobs, so they left Mississippi to go to Chicago to work. So yes, my grandma is Haitian descent, the grandma on my mother's side.
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, it's important for us to know our roots. And sometimes that's challenging for our community because the records aren't all there.
Yes, and that I love Ancestry.com. It's mostly accurate because it had my granddaddy been born 3 times. Because back then, like one of my grandma would say, a midwife. So there was no hospital. They delivered birth in the community. Wow. So there was no records you wrote down who was born. You just kept that down until they start doing census and stuff like that, and then you can put that information down. But most of the time, they didn't come to your house. Because I've been living for 50 years, and I only fill out census one time. So that's how accurate I think the census are. So, in my opinion.
Oh, that's interesting. And then I think it's really important too for us to know our history. Like for African Americans, our history didn't start as slavery, and I think we get that misconstrued sometimes.
Absolutely.
We need to know about the kings and the leaders and the inventors and all the people that we're descended from because it gives us confidence.
Absolutely. And that's why I did Ancestry.com, because I found out I have a little bit of everything. So majority is African American, but then I have 10% European. So that's why I used to joke with people, I'm a Viking, because I'm from Ireland. And then I have 10%, then I have 1% Peruvian, 1% from Bolivian. So it's like you have so many roots, but as people say, they only see us as blacks because they think about slaves, but they forget, like you're saying, back in Africa, and Nigeria was one of the big countries in Africa now, and it's just like America. Some people, when they see America, they think of people with no clothes, no education. They think of people starving. So that goes back to like when I was married. Again, one of my previous wife was she was from I was about to say from Somalia. I can't think of it. I just ended up a brain dead for a second. I think of it later.
Right.
But she was from Africa, and when you talk to her and you see how she was raised up, and they lived in a mansion. So you were like, wow. So when you think about Africans, don't think of a poor African. You think of educated, intelligent people, even now in Africa.
Amen. And that's important. It's like we need to go back and do the research for ourselves and look, how do our people live? Where do we come from? And those things, and don't just take the common media's view of it because it may be wrong.
Absolutely.
What are some of your goals now?
Okay. Goals now. Now, like you mentioned earlier, I have several businesses. So to get these business off the ground, so I have a franchise, and it's 1 hour, and Mrs. Sparky. They're located in South Haven in Memphis, Tennessee. And get those off the ground. Another business I have is Easy Tax LLC. So we've been doing tax. I've been doing taxes all my life. Ever since I was armed, I used to do people taxes for them. I used to do their 1040 easy or 1048. So I always been doing taxes. So I have a tax business with my sister. And one of my goals is to get that out the business. And another thing what I want to do is called Eckles Generation of Wealth. Okay. So when people think about generational wealth, everybody have a different meaning. Mine is quite different. Mine is one of the things I want to do is like I like press. I want to have a family press, something that someone can be proud of. Mm-hmm. And you see most famous entertainers, they have it. Like, I think of Venus Williams and the Williams Society create their little logo. That's a press. Yeah. So I want to have something like that. That's one of the goals, to create a press. Another goal is that when I'm talking about that wealth, is generational wealth, is knowledge. People always think about wealth to be something like money or investment or land. I have that. We have that. We're going to try to leave that to the family, but with 8 kids, that's going to be kind of hard. So you got to create more. That's just a lot of land. So we have a couple of properties around the southeast area, but with 8 kids, it's hard to divide. So most time it's helping them reach their goal or seeing how to invest their money, teaching them about credit scores and why you need to teach them credit now. So that's one of the classes I think that they should teach you and start in junior high school, or what they call middle school now, is how to keep your credit score up. And that's one thing we don't do as a community. So that's one of my goals, to work with my sister. So I'm supposed to be doing a mini video on teaching people what the real deal about credit scores.
Oh, I love it. You have to give us the link so we can share it here too. Because one of the classes that I'm taking now is on financial literacy for African Americans, and it's all focused around building it up for the next generation. Absolutely. So I love that you're saying that, and that you're taking action to share that with the community. Because it's not about just us giving, but we're successful when we can all rise up.
Yes. So the main thing, like I said, since I'm like in my family, when I say family, I'm talking about my siblings, I'm well off. A little more well off than others because of the opportunities I've been presented with and the education I have. And that's one thing my sister always brings to me. She said, you always, no matter where you want to bring all us up. I said, yes, I want to pull the crab. Like you mentioned, pulling the coattail. I don't want to be pulling the crab down. I want to pull the crab up. So it's a difference. So like mostly that's what I'm trying to do. So my wife said, you give your last to your family. I said, that's it. That's my most important thing. That's my family. And trying to make sure we are financial wealth and happy and well. And not just with money, with knowledge, and being able to spend time with your family, which COVID has taught me a lot. It's more important than being family right now.
I love it. I love the true values that really make us wealthy beyond just money. Yes. So it's important that we see that as men, more than just money, but what we're driving and what we're reaching for. Before we go, because we could go on. We're gonna have to make another video at some point because there's so many stories that our viewers have.
Don't tell all my stories.
It's gonna be a movie one day.
Yeah, but to tell about Thomas. Thomas is great. I love Thomas like a brother. We went on many TDY trips. I mean, temporary doing assignments to different locations on the projects we were working on, and we know a lot about each other. We tell stories and everything. So that's why I said, don't tell all my stories. All my stories are good. So we just tell the good ones.
Oh man, and I've learned so much from you. So that's why I knew I had to bring you on the show, because I knew the wealth of wisdom that's here. And a lot of times you'll see that around you for young people. Go ahead and ask somebody out to lunch. Say, hey, I just want to pick your brain for a couple minutes. Let me hear some of your stories, because I want to learn so that I can grow. But before we go, is there one book, because I'm a big advocate in reading, that you could recommend to our readers?
So my book is more, I got another project. See, once again, you just open up. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm working with my my buddy who was my war buddy back when I went to Desert Storm, and he's the first sergeant. We're trying to help veterans out with disability, PTSD, sinus, chronic back pains, and that's why I suffer from all this stuff. So I suffer a lot of like chronic back pain and illness that we have, but we don't know how to put in the paperwork to do it. So what the book I'm reading, I think it's called Veterans. I sent it to you. It's called Veterans, their Dependents and Benefits. Okay. So that's what I'm reading. So because I want to start another business. So this other business is to help veterans to put in for their disability claim, the correct one. Because sometimes it takes you almost 5 years to the claim. Sometimes it takes you 20 years.
5 years?
5 years.
So you're suffering.
You suffering during that time, and you asking for help. So that's the book I'm reading. So, and it's showing me step by step the right way to do it. And I see flaws in our system, in the VA system right now. So a veteran shouldn't have to seek outside help. So one of the big things about when you fill out your claim, you can't use your VA doctor. So I go to the VA, and that doctor prescribes me medication, give me diagnosis, but I can't use that doctor, what they call a nexus letter or DBQ, to fill out my claim. I have to go to an outside doctor. So it's real.
Sounds complicated.
It is complicated. It is difficult, and it is frustrating. Because sometimes, even when I put my claim in, so I put a claim in, say February, it might not get approved until 18 months later, 2 years later, 5 years later, because you still fighting. You got to put in for appeals and go to this board and that board. Supplemental claims, all that kind of stuff. That's what I'm reading about now. So that's the main book I'm reading now. Because other side books on the side I'm reading that help me out.
Wow. So we'll definitely post that book in the comments below when we post the video, because it's very important. I'm a big advocate for helping our veterans. I mean, they went out and served our country, put their lives on the line, put their families, in jeopardy too, because if you don't have your parent, that's a big loss in your family. So we should be taking care of it and making sure that the needs are met when they come home. So Jacques, thank you so much for being on the show today. I had a great time. I can't wait to have you back again sometime and just glean more of the knowledge. So
thanks for having me, Thomas, and it's always real when I talk to you and talk to another fellow African-American man and professional and a father and a husband.
I appreciate that. All right, to our viewers, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. I tell you, it was so great to sit with my good friend Jacques and just reminisce and learn so many new things too. There was a lot that I didn't know about his life, and then some other connection points that we just found out today that we'll be able to work on some things together. And so that's so special. As we go forth from today, if you were engaged in the video and you liked it, please share it. Share it with another brother that you know. Share it with a friend. And don't only share it, but talk about it. Set aside some time afterwards to talk about some of the key points you got out of it, or maybe some of your own life experiences. You can also put them in the comments below. Let's generate some conversation, because that's what POUR is all about. It's about sharing that knowledge that we have in us with others. But I also want to challenge you. Jacques mentioned one thing that really stood out to me. He said that when he was in high school and applying for the service academies, he didn't have anyone who knew the path to help him. And there's so many young people out there like that, who have a dream, have a desire, and they're steps away from achieving it, but they don't have the right wisdom, and they need someone just to give them some knowledge to help them. He didn't need money at that point. He didn't need a whole lot of time. He just needed someone to guide him through the process, and it could have made a different result. Now, he went on to be successful anyway, but as members of this POUR community, what I want to challenge every man out there to do is to look around you and say, God, is there another young person out there that I can pour into, that I can take under my wing, that may just need that little bit of knowledge that I have, that expertise that I've developed over the years, that I can share it with them and equip them for an even better future? That's the challenge for this week. So have a great week, and remember to POUR.